and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. On the last segment, we did talk about the intervals, and I gave you examples, and we played sub, and I played the scale in thirds, which you can start on any note and do all of these things. It doesn't have to be the low D. I chose the low D because it gives me a bigger range to deal with, because the instrument will only go so high. But you can start with any note and do those things. So I thought today, what I'm going to start is I've written a song for all of the intervals, for thirds, for fourths, for fifths, and what you're going to find is the first 2 or 3 notes, especially the first 2 notes, are going to be what the interval really is. So I have a piece of music here, and let's see if I can find, oh, here it is. We start off, and it's a regular song, so it'll require a little bit of music reading skills to do it. It's a song that's in 3/4. That's waltz time, and I like waltz time. Treble clef, because that's what the woodwinds mostly play in, and then you have a repeat sign right there. When you play, you'll play this line, and you'll play what's called the first ending. This line here is the first ending. It has that 1 there, and then there's a repeat sign right here, so you go back to it and play it again, only you skip the first ending because you've played it once, and you play the second ending. And then there's another repeat sign here. You'll go from here, that second ending, and play this, and here you have another repeat sign, and that's the first ending. And then you go back here, and you play this, and you play this. I didn't mark that as a second ending, but it really is. And then you have another repeat sign where you play this, and then that's your first ending. Go back to that repeat sign, and then play this and skip the first ending and go to the second ending. And that's the whole song. There's no DC, there's no DS, there's no sign or DC or anything like that to worry about. You basically have a song that's basically played in thirds with first and second endings and repeat signs. You know the repeat signs because here's one, here's the other, and you just play it. And when you play the first one, you go back and you skip the first one and play what the second one is. So this is a little waltz. It's kind of easy, and but I think, you know, easy music can be beautiful music. But this I'm doing as a teaching exercise. Where is the third? Well, there's a lot of them in there. This G to an E is going to be a third, and then the E to the G is another third. This A to the F is a third. The F to the A is another third. Here's another third. And so it repeats itself. And when you get here, this B to the G, this G to the E is actually a third. This is a third, and it forms kind of like a little arpeggio. What is an arpeggio? An arpeggio is when you have notes in a chord, but woodwinds and brass, they can't play chords. You can only play one note at a time. So they can play those notes separately, and it's called an arpeggio. If you were able to, and here again, maybe I should just show this on this little melodica. Supposing I play a scale, well, a chord, but I don't play it together. That's an arpeggio. Now, a lot of times it's 4 or 5 notes. If I play it together, it's a chord. Not all thirds, but still a chord if you play it together. But woodwinds, except for an instrument like this, a melodica or some other instrument that has the ability to play more than one note at a time, I'm thinking of keyboards, organs, pianos, violins, any of the stringed instruments where you're not fingering one note at a time, where you can actually use your fingers to play more than one note at a time. Anyone that can play more than one note at a time, because the instruments that they're playing allows it, that they actually are playing a chord. However, if you can't play the chord, a lot of music is based on just the arpeggios. They're like a chord, but they're broken up into single notes. That's what it is. And a lot of music is based on that, and that's the way it has to be played, even with a piano. If a piano sees a series of notes, and then they're still going to play them as single notes, even if they played them together. It was a chord. It doesn't mean they will play them together. As a chord, you would have the notes one right above the other. As an arpeggio, they're all separate notes. That would be the difference in terms of whether you were watching or you were looking at the music or not. So let me get to this. I'm not going to play it too fast, and you can see what it's like. You can kind of count it. Quarter notes are worth one beat. It's 3/4 time. That means 3 beats to another, 3 beats to a measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's a whole note, so that gets the whole 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like a scale like, and then it's the way it is all the way through. So I'll play it, and then we'll kind of do a little more dissecting on it. This is the way it goes. Now that's the whole thing, and it is a waltz, but I wrote it deliberately just to get the thirds in so you could hear them. Otherwise, I might not have done so much with the thirds, but nonetheless, it works with this piece because that's what this piece is based on. So 1, 2, 3, and that's all thirds. This is all thirds, and it repeats. This is an arpeggio-like. It would be like a chord if you played it together, but you play the notes separately, but it's 3 beats to the measure, and it repeats this here, repeats what we played up there. A lot of music you will find is written that way. You've got your main melody line, and then you get an interval in between in which it's not the main melody line. It's something else, but it kind of blends in. In some kinds of music, it's called a bridge. When you get through that, it repeats what the top line was, so it's a recap. So you have, and even symphonies are written this way. Your main melodic line, which can be pretty complicated with quite a few instruments, and then after that, you have something in between that's like an intermediary piece that isn't directly related to what you played, but will blend in. But it's almost like it's a separate song in itself. And then you go back to the original and play the original again, maybe a little differently, maybe the timing is a little different, or the key is a little different. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it kind of recaps the type of music that you have that you started with. So that's the 3 parts of the song. And it's not unusual to play that, to write a song like that. Now, why so many repeats? I find that if I didn't put the repeats in, I would have to be writing a whole lot more, because I would have to write this twice, and then I'd have to write this twice, and then I'd have to write this twice. It's easier to put the repeats in. They're not hard to follow, and then you can get the full song. Now, if I didn't use the repeats, I could make this song shorter, not by playing every phrase twice like I do, but just by playing it once. But it would really shorten the music, and I don't know if it would sound as good, but I'm going to try it just to see what it's like. But you'll find it's really almost too short. notice when I do that, I have to use the second endings because the first endings sound like they need to go back and be played again. Sometimes the way that you write a piece, the last few notes before a repeat sign sounds like it has to go back, like it's not finished. But then when you play the second ending, it sounds finished. And that's why I would have to, if I were going to play each phrase or each melody line, there are really 3 melody lines, but one is a repeat of the other. If I really played that, and I was going to spend some time with it, to play it just once, I'd have to use the second endings, and it would be too short. But if I play it with the repeats, then I have more length to it, but it also feels like a more complete song. You know, the average song on the radio is probably about 3 minutes long. It's about 3 minutes long. Well, let me play this again. It's always wise when you get to the end of a song to slow it down. That would be a retard, and it would be abbreviated RIT period. I didn't do that on any of these songs that I've written for intervals, and the reason is that I don't want to confuse you by showing you too much at one time. But it would be very easy to write RIT about here. And then you get here and you slow that down, and when you slow that down, it kind of brings the song to a natural completion. But you can see when I write, and I'll just play this part again, it looks like it's going to feel like it needs to go back, and it does need to go back. But when I play the second ending, it like completes that phrase. I'm going to play just the first ending so you can see, just imagine, you know you have to go back because it's not quite done. Now, it's not enough, you know. It has that feeling of, well, all right, what's the rest of it? What's the rest of it? And so you play it again, and when you get to the second ending, it sounds like it's done. That phrase is done. All right, so it's time for the next one. And the next one is your interval right here. This would be your bridge because it's just not the same. But the one thing that's similar is it still has that style of being thirds or arpeggios. It has that feeling about it. And so therefore, you can actually kind of hear it in your mind. And then what's the natural conclusion? You'll go back to what you played before and repeat that whole thing again. And that's the recap. Now, I don't necessarily write all of that down. And a lot of music, you don't write everything down because it's kind of obvious when you play it what it is. What has to be written down are the repeat signs. If you have like signs in terms of poco a poco, in other words, you increase the speed little by little. Poco a poco means little by little. Or the dynamic signs, what's louder and what's softer. Those things need to be written in, but you don't need to write in an explanation for everything because the music kind of lends itself to that. Remember, music can be a language, and you can read it as a language. So that is an example of the thirds. Now I'm going to take this down. Let's see, here's another thirds song. It's a different song, but it's also based upon thirds. And you start off, and this is 4/4 time. It's not a song that's based on a waltz tempo. 4/4 time is not a waltz tempo. And so you have your treble clef. It's in the key of G. You know that because you've got your F sharp there. And here's your 4/4 time, which means 4 beats to a measure, and a quarter note gets 1 beat. And so you play it. There are thirds in it because it's based upon thirds, but I've changed the time signature. This would be an arpeggio D, A, F sharp, D. If you played it together, it would be a nice little chord, but according to this, we play it separately. If I were to play it together, I would have to put your D, and then I'd have to put the A underneath here, the F sharp underneath here, and the D. It would all be in a straight line. Then you know it would be a chord. But woodwinds can't play chords, and brass can't play chords either, so everything is going to be lined up, you know, separately. This is 3 beats because this a half note in 4/4 time gets 2 beats. When you add a dot, it gives you 1/2 of what the note originally was. So if a half note is 2 beats, that dot, half of a 2 beat is 1 beat. So you add that together, and that makes that note actually 3 beats long. And this is the 4th beat. I notice there's something else I want to show you about this. On the end note is a D, but it's 3 beats. But the time signature is 4/4. Why would I not have 4/4 beats if it's actually 4/4 time? Well, if you look up here, that's a 1-beat introduction, or 1-beat first note of the song. So together, even though you're not playing them together, this 3 plus this 1 equals 4. So mathematically, that comes out correct. I don't personally think it makes any difference, but that's the way a lot of music is written. If you have a certain amount of beats in the first measure, then that can be balanced out with whatever is left in the last measure. And a lot of music is written that way. Now, this is not, no repeats on this, but it is actually on thirds. So let me play this. And you can kind of follow along on that music. Now you see what I've done. It's a whole different song. The character of the song is entirely different than the first one, basically because it's not a waltz, it's not a march, it's just a song in 4/4. You don't have to play it fast, but you can play it fast if you want to. I think it's good to practice these intervals, and we're still here working on just the thirds, and it's good to do that. You get a sense of what a third actually feels like in terms of where it is, how far it goes up, and how far it goes down. If you take these first 2 measures, those are all based on thirds. The third would be D, E, F sharp, because it's in the key of F sharp. That's the third. Or so I would feel comfortable in allowing a child who's just learning how to play that, and even an adult. The problem with a lot of music books is that when they write the music books, they write songs that they feel childlike. you know, and they are childlike, and some of them are songs that children know. And so therefore, you know, you play them and you learn how to play. The adults don't necessarily, if they're a new student and they're an adult and they're just beginning to learn how to play, they don't necessarily feel comfortable in playing child songs. You know, like Mary Had a Little Lamb and things like that. It's great for kids, they love it. But what about adults? Well, it feels kind of too childish. You're supposing you're 43 years old and you've decided to learn how to play a flute. You know, I have had a lot of adult students, and they don't want to spend their time practicing Mary Had a Little Lamb. Not that there's anything wrong with it, because they'll progress beyond that point. But children like it. They're more childlike songs. But I like to write to show intervals, to show scales, to show chords, to show fingerings of notes, timing, all of those things that you need to know. And it can be done with songs that are neither child nor adult. They're just simpler songs, but they have a different melody. As a matter of fact, one of the things I write for when I'm writing for students is so that I can play harmony to their playing melody, and then we can reverse. They can do harmony, I can do melody. So they get a sense of the harmonics. They get a sense of what harmony sounds like. They get a sense of what it feels like to play music with another person where you're listening to what they're doing so you can blend in with what they're doing. There's an awful lot that can be taught by writing it. Now, being a single person here and playing it alone, I obviously am not going to play harmony at the same time. But there are times, and I've done it before, where I'll have a recording of what I've played, and I'm playing the melody, but then when I replay the recording, I'll do the harmony to the melody that I've already pre-recorded. And so therefore you get the harmony in this kind of thing. So that is still a third. And, you know, I think I'll close it here, because to get into something else, I wouldn't have the time to really spend with it. So I'm going to close it here, and we're going to continue with this, because I've got songs written all the way up through the octaves, and then some other songs in addition to that. And I do music writing, and I try to do uplifting, cheerful music that people will enjoy listening to, even if they don't know the songs, because they've never heard them before unless I play them. So, and if you want to write music, think of the intervals, think of how you can play them, and how you can put them in a song, and start off with the interval. Now see, I just wrote a song. It just came out of my head. I did it again, Rick. So anyway, we'll close it here, and please join me next time.